If you happen to see one of my most recent videos where I walk through the Moment Factory project and learn how that was put together as my first day in Unreal Engine, that whole thing got me really interested in not only learning about the experience of just navigating the stadium itself as an individual user or, virtually, rather than going through an animation sequence, but it got me really interested in DMX so that I could learn how to control my own lighting. So today we're going to take everything that I've learned, we're going to start from scratch. We're going to create an Unreal Engine project, we're going to add our own lighting, and we're going to use TouchDesigner to make that lighting audio reactive, and we'll have full control over everything. There's a lot to this, so let's get started. All right, we're jumping right into a brand new project that I created, and I did add sample content, but we're going to set up the plugins for DMX. We're going to want the control console, the DMX engine, and DMX fixtures. And DMX protocol was already selected, so I guess that's just part of the deal. Next, we're going to open up the content drawer, and we're going to change the setting to make sure that you can actually see the engine content, because we're going to go into the plugin for the engine, and we're going to grab ourselves the light fixtures. I don't think that's cheating, right? I mean, you're just going to buy a light, it's going to come with some programming. So we look for the DMX, and I'm going to use the moving head, and we're going to drag that onto our scene. From here, I'm just going to position the light and get it so that I can see it. When I hit play, I can actually see the lighting as the character. I'm kind of rusty in Unreal Engine's UI, and I've been in this for a couple months, so it took me a little bit to get this tweaked. But eventually, I got it there and set up this one light. Once I got that where I'm happy with, I went ahead and deleted some of the extra content that I brought in. Then I work on dimming the lights, because that's what this is all about, is a light show. Didn't really want a bright sky, so I just adjusted things till I was happy with it. From here, we're going to go set up our DMX library. So we're going to go back into the content drawer, and we're going to go into the main folder. I'm not too worried about where I put it at this point. And I add the DMX library. Name it what I want. I'm going to use TouchDesigner, so I named it TD. Just kind of reference that. From here, we're going to select the light, and we're going to filter on DMX, and we're going to assign that library to this light. That way we can actually see the light when we double click the library, which we'll do here. And now we'll be able to assign this light to this library here. And you can see we found it. And I'm going to change it to moving head, basically because that's what it is. Come on a moving spotlight, if you've ever seen that. It's got rotation and different tilts and pans and all kinds of features. In fact, that's what we're going to set up here. We're going to set up all the functions that we're going to want our light to have. I'm not going to go crazy and set up every single capability that these will come with out of the box, literally in the physical world. I'm just going to set up some basics that I want to use to control with audio reactivity. And so we're doing things like color and pan and tilt, and obviously we need some of the basics so that we can turn it on and off. But doing this real quick, do you want to make sure the pan and tilt are set up with 16 channel, because the others are 8 channel, and 16 is really important on pan and tilt. Alright, we'll go ahead and save what we've done so far, and then we're going to open up the fixture patch tab, and we're going to look for our light here, the moving head, and we're going to assign that to the patch. And basically we're all good. It's going to do that automatically. It's going to pick 2 channels for the pan and tilt, like I mentioned. You can count them out over there, and you'll see they're all lined up over here. Alright, at this point you're going to see the name of the fixture patch that we've created, and we're going to want to keep that in mind because now we need to go assign that to our light. So we're going to close that out. We're going to open up the content drawer. Do we need to? No. We just click on the light. And we're going to go back to the DMX settings within the light's properties. And underneath those, you'll see the the library itself. And then you'll see the patch. And that's where we assign the patch. And that's what's going to allow us to map those channels to this particular light. this point, I'm going to fix a couple things. First thing is I'm going to open up the library and correct the fact that I did not change my pan and tilt to 16-bit. I'm honestly not sure why you need 16-bit here, because it didn't really seem to help me in my TouchDesigner interface, but that's what I learned, and I guess it makes sense. We'll figure it out when I get a real light. But then there's also these inputs. Now I'm using Unreal Engine 5.0, and in the 5.4, these settings were automatically set, and you have to add an input and an output. If you don't, the communication from DMX doesn't go anywhere, and it just kind of dies when you open the controller, nothing happens. So now that we've set that, we can open up the controller, and we can hit play. Come on now. Gonna move it over so I can see it. Then we can hit play. Now from this point, as I turn the shutter up and then bring the brightness up, we can see that we've got lighting. So now we're using our controller to control the light. So now everything's mapped. We've got everything we need. We can use these in TouchDesigner now. And I'm just kind of playing around with it, making sure everything's working the way I want. And we're looking good. So playing with color. The color wheel I don't like. I want to know if there's a different way to handle color. Like, I'd like to just set an RGB value or something, but I don't know. Like I said, I'm still learning all this stuff. But I guess it's kind of cool you get these split colors, but there's a certain number of values that are useful, and there's a certain number that gets noisy. So we'll stop this. Now that we have everything set up with the one light, now I can start duplicating that light. And all of those features that I just added to it come with any addition. Now, there's different ways that you can set these lights up. Like, if you were doing this for real, you could actually have multiple maps and basically multiple patchings of lighting, so that you can have a row that are on the left that go one way and a row that are on the right that go another way. I took the easy route here. I just went ahead and duplicated the same functionality, created 2 rows of lights, and then flipped it around. So yeah, you could do a lot better job than I did, but you get the gist of it. Now at this point, I'm just kind of fine-tuning things to get them to where I think I'd like them. I don't want it to look like total garbage for this video. I mean, really, lighting design is something I've never done, and so I just kind of thought through, you know, some basic what would be kind of cool. And I did try another video that someone had made and went through their tutorial, and it was okay. But this is slightly better, I guess, because there's a little more dynamic, more, variation in the lights that I created. But again, you've got complete control over all this stuff. It's just a matter of how much time you want to spend here. And I had limited time today to create this video, so I wanted to kind of just get something that looked halfway decent. Alright, there's one more thing we need to change before we're ready for TouchDesigner. We need to change the network settings so that we're no longer listening on the home IP, which is 1.127.0.0.1, and then we change it to 000, so that we're listening on the network. We're actually going to use localhost from TouchDesigner, and we need UE5 to be listening there. Now, before we hop into TouchDesigner, I did want to fix a couple things. I wanted to add zoom. I forgot that as one of my fixture functions, and I think zoom is really powerful when you're looking at the lighting and seeing, you know, it dance, we'll say, as it reacts to the audio. So I'm going to add that here. And we'll save again, and we'll hop on over to TouchDesigner. This seems like a good place for me to stop and tell you, I don't know much about TouchDesigner at all. I only learned enough to get in here and export audio, use audio input to output DMX data, and that's it. But from what I understand, TouchDesigner is incredible. There's like tons of powerful things you can do with it. So here's where I'm going to just grab myself a DMX out chop, and we're going to set it to the ArtNet protocol, and we're going to get the rate down to 30, which was a recommendation by someone else. I still don't know what the official setting should be, and we're going to set it up to use Universe 1. Then we're going to assign the local host to the network and use the Same ID that we had in in UE5 here. So you're basically your home IP, 127.0.0.1. Next, I'm going to add a constant, and these constants are basically variables that are going to align with everything that we've done in UE5, and they're going to map to our functions. So we're going to go through and create constants that align perfectly with our functions. So rather than go into a bunch of detail, I'm just going to skip to the point where I've got that done. You'll notice I have two pan high and low and tilt high and low. That aligns with the functions that we have where the channels are skipped. You have the pan and tilt are 16-bit, so they take two channels. And so we've replicated that here. Again, I still don't really understand why, but at this point, we're just setting up the values in things like color and shutter to make sure our light is on, so our shutter's all the way up, our dimmer's up to a point where we can see, and we're going to adjust some pan and tilts just so we can see where we're at. Now that we've got the output, you can actually see there's our lights that match the settings we just had. We've got everything set up to where we've adjusted our pan and tilt, and sure enough, the lighting matched it. Love it. So everything's connected. Now we head into the hard part where we've refined the data to allow these lights to look good as we analyze the audio input and convert that to DMX data. Now there's some quirks in here because the numbers that you saw on the controller are like 0 to 255, and so the audio settings, you kind of have to tweak those in order to get those up into the range that you want them. So we're going to use math operators. But first, let's get in here and get some audio so that we can have something to work with. I personally am been working to get my DJ controller in place so that I can use my DJ controller to dynamically generate the audio and have the lights follow what I do with the music, and it works. It's really cool. But for now, I'm just going to use an audio file for the input, and we'll worry about the DJ controller later. So I found an artist named Prazkhanal. I hope I got your name right. They've got some really great music, and it's very dynamic and has a lot of variation in it. So it was really, I thought, a good application for this, so we can see some variation in the lighting. Now that I've got my input audio coming into my input chop, I'm going to set up an output so that we can actually hear that audio. All we have to do is set up the output chop so that it's using my default audio, and then I just connect the nodes and Alright, now that we have that working, we're going to analyze the audio input. So let's put a node in here to analyze that, bring the audio in, and we'll create a math chop. Now pay attention to what I'm doing here next. It's really important because I'm going to hit the plus sign on the node right here, and that's what allows me to grab the channel and drag it into a value where we export that value into that constant. Now the settings on the Analyze node are pretty important right now because we're just looking at maximum, and then we're going to multiply that by 1. In this case it's 1, and then we set the range from 0 to 1 because it's very small to equal 1 to 100. That's what helps us get our color range. So now let's see what happens when we play this since we've got our color node set up. Nice, so you could see the audio was being fed into the constants, and it was actually controlling the color. So let's get the rest of these set up. We're going to set up the shutter, or we don't need to set up shutter, dimmer, because we want to control how bright the light is, and we just continue through this process through each of the channels that we want to control. And I actually ran some tests with pan low and tilt low just to see if they controlled anything on the lights, and they really didn't seem to. So at some point I'll probably just remove those altogether. But here we're just going to go through and get everything set up and use math chops for each one, because each one of these kind of has their own values. Like, you don't want pan and tilt to go too far, otherwise it gets way too noisy as your lights are flying all around. So you can manage the the multiplier and the actual range that you set. So you can minimize your range so that you're only within a certain distance in how far that head rotates. So this took a lot of practice. I actually found that in a little bit we're going to show you how I used the DJ controller and everything changed. I had to multiply things at a completely different level. The input from the file was different than the input from the DJ controller, so a lot of times you had to get things dialed in just right for the system that you're working with. Now that we've got everything set up, let's check it out, see how it works. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go ahead and connect our DJ controller and take this whole thing to the next level. I've got found that I can use the stereo mix on my Windows machine to bring audio in from my controller, and that way I can feed that to TouchDesigner. So we'll take this audio device input and we'll drag that node into the analyze node. So we're disconnecting the audio file altogether, and now we're going to switch over to Juiced, since I have the Hercules Impulse 500, and we're going to fire up some music with this thing. Now at this point my music wasn't recording, but you can see that it's actually being fed through TouchDesigner, and it is impacting our lighting here. This is where my lighting wasn't quite as responsive because the DJ controller acted differently. So I had to go in and make a bunch of changes to the settings. Now at this point it's okay to just go ahead and delete the input file unless you want to keep that there so that you can use it. I'm just going to focus on using my DJ controller as the input, so I'm going to dial in all my settings for that. After double checking my settings and a quick app restart, my Juiced audio is recording. Now if we flip back over to TouchDesigner, you can see the audio coming through the audio device input here. We'll stop it just to prove it. See, that's music stops, lights stop, everything's going. Now let's kick it back into gear. And there you have it, dynamic DMX lighting that reacts to audio from a DJ controller. Alright, well, if you have an interest in learning more about how I got here in this project, you're welcome to go over to my blog, tech-multiverse.com, and check out the article I wrote that corresponds with this video. Basically goes through the whole process of how I got here, starting off with the DMX project template and the keyframed version that I did to teach me how DMX works in Unreal Engine. And I go through different controllers I've got my eye on, like this DMX controller here, but then also the DJ controller that I used for this project. And then there's some cool audio reactive art examples, videos that I found interesting, and tutorials I'd like to dig into more. But also some of the stuff that I've learned about DMX and how that works with special effects lighting in movie studios, where you can actually have a virtual light that shines in the real world, just like what we did here, but only I didn't have the physical lighting yet. But that's part of the whole project, is getting myself started where I understand DMX lighting, where I used this tutorial originally and got all my fixtures set up, gained that understanding, and then came into TouchDesigner. This was the original one that I set up and helped me document this to get this video made and to go through this third phase of the project, which is the video you're watching now. Future exploration I plan to do is addressing some of the rendering issues. I think I've got some problems with artifacts, light trails like this one here, where you can see there's a little trail of light following the spotlight here, but also some artifacts. Those are things that I think can be addressed with additional RAM on my computer, but also interested in looking into the 2-channel 16-bit pan and tilt details, where I wasn't seeing any effects in TouchDesigner. Like, why is that? Why did someone even recommend that you need 2 channels? It might be helpful if I have a physical light to explore that further. Also plan to do further audio analysis, where I potentially leverage, understand what is the audio analysis. Can I get different frequencies to react to send specific data to a specific type of lighting? For example, deep bass hits going to strobe lights, or higher frequencies going to lasers, which is actually really cool when you make that happen. Then there's finally, once I learn that, I'll optimize some of the mapping of the values to the movement and get these lights dialed in the way I want. And also controlling physical lights. I've had my eye on the gig bar move, which includes 2 of these moving heads as part of that, but then some other lights including strobes and lasers, just really cool stuff. So to get you started, if you're interested in taking off from starting where I left off, you can go download my project files at GitHub. I've got those uploaded for you. And that's pretty much it. Also, just a fun note that I started off about a year ago exploring Roblox, and guess where I was? I was in a concert template looking at lighting and dancing around with my friends. And it was kind of funny to see over the past year how far I've progressed, including exploring Unity in the process. So, all right, well, thanks again for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe if you're interested in more videos.